So, you have a tent and a rig, and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big, on the trails and some super glamping? Want ideas, tips, news, and reviews? A podcast that's first rate and here just for you? You don't have to think about it. Join us and be about it. Something interesting? We want to hear about it. Come on, let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints podcast.
Sponsored by MIDLAND Communication for Every Adventure, the industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MYMEDIC. Sponsored by TEMBO TUSK.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Hi, I'm Phil from Waypoint Overland, and you're listening to Random Waypoints. All right, so here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Random Waypoints podcast. We'll be doing an episode every week. So like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss an episode. This week, we're in Plain, Washington, at the Northwest Overland Rally with two special guests. So let's get right to it. How you doing, boys?
Fantastic.
Introduce yourselves to my audience.
I'm Mike Block from Backroads 4Wd Drive Training.
And my name's Will Gillette from Backroads 4Wd Drive Training.
Well, guys, the reason why I asked you to sit down with me is I really wanted to talk about education and what you do. So let's talk about education first. Me personally, I'd like to start off with my experience. I was out here doing it pretty early, and I thought I knew everything. I took a few classes, and I found out that it's lucky I'm still alive. So I value, from a personal aspect, the importance of training. You can literally be out here and kill yourselves. So what do you think about what I've said so far?
I could agree with you on that statement. A lot of folks can do a little YouTube education, learn a lot of wrong things, buy a very capable stock vehicle from a dealership, and go out in the woods and drive it, go off-roading, and then realize they're in over their head. They've got these magic buttons, the lockers, the traction control systems, and they really don't understand the capability of the stock rig. Unmodified is extremely capable, and get over their head.
Yeah, I agree. The technology and the gadgets that Mike talked about that come not just in the high-end Jeep Rubicons and Toyota TRD, series vehicles, but most stock off-road vehicles today, even the low-end models, are way more capable than people understand, and they get the feeling that driving off-road is just like driving on-road. If I want to go faster, I hit the skinny pedal. If I want to stop, I hit the brake pedal. And they don't understand the nuances of driving off-road until it's too late, until they're stuck or broken or hurt.
Well, it sounds like we're all on the same page about the importance of education if you're going to be getting out here and doing it. So, in my opinion, and you guys tell me what you think, you should know how to recover your vehicle. You should know how to do simple repairs on your vehicle, and you should be able to do simple repairs on yourself. You should have taken some kind of first aid class, some kind of wilderness survival class, something like that, at a minimum.
Absolutely.
All of those things.
So prior to becoming a certified trainer, for my own concerns with health and safety, in the military days, you always had your annual first aid training. So after departing from the military, you don't have that training anymore. A friend of mine, his wife worked for Remote Medical International, and I went and took my first wilderness first aid course with Remote Medical International, probably in the late 2000s, maybe right around 2010 at the latest, and continued that education every 2 years, recertifying, because I knew if I was with somebody or in a group that I could at least render some first aid, make an assessment on their health, and decide to get them to some sort of medical care of a higher authority.
So I don't want to assume. You said you've repeatedly gone back to training.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Because you have a 2-year certification, and every time I've done that 2-year renewal, processes have changed. The medical world is always evolving big time. Folks will go out and buy these really nice first aid kits. They're $100 or better, and they have no clue on how to use the product that's in there, let alone they're trying to work above their training abilities. So they get this kit that's almost not usable because they don't have the education.
Yeah, I think like Mike says, these medical kits, they buy the biggest fancy thing like all of us overlanders do. We got to have the pointy shovel and all that stuff. So we got to have the big fancy medical kit. And if you open that medical kit and you don't know how to use 3/4 of the things in it, then that medical kit is way beyond your level of practice.
I agree.
And we get into these things and we spend all this money on a medical kit. We spend all this money on a vehicle. We buy all these fancy recovery gadgets without knowing how to use any of them. And that's the big gap that we see repeated over and over and over again in our sport.
Nice.
So when we went to Namibia in 2019, at first it was just going to be myself and my girlfriend. And she didn't have any wilderness first aid training. And she goes, well, you have that. I said, yeah, but what if I get hurt? Who's going to take care of me? So she's already had all the off-road driving. You would never know it, but she could care less about this stuff. But she knows how to drive off-road. She knows how to do basic recoveries. And that was the final piece for me to feel safe. So she went to Knowles National Outdoor Leadership School in La Conner, Washington. They have their big campus there, and she took the wilderness first aid course. And she's like, wow, I really learned a lot. Like, yeah, everybody needs to do that ventures out into the wilderness. You're out 10 miles and you have some sort of injury, you're 10 miles away from help. So I think probably having medical knowledge is one of the biggest critical things. Map and compass course you can get through REI. Read a few navigation books. Go out and practice those things. If you're an REI member, it's a cheap course. It's $50, and you'll get out your compass and you'll learn how to navigate. It's a few courses will go a long way.
Well, funny story. I've been all over the United States on all sorts of trails, and I've come upon people who are stuck on the trail. Most commonly, it's not a recovery situation. It's their GPS went down, or they just went out and didn't even have a GPS. They don't have any paper maps. If they do have the paper maps, they don't know how to use them, so they're waiting for somebody to tell them how to get out of the forest.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely.
I feel you when you say that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as navigation is concerned, they say the best backup for a GPS is another GPS. But always carry a paper map and know how to use them. Something that we tell our students in our classes is that the skills that we teach them, we practice. We, on an ongoing basis, it's perishable knowledge. And the same goes for the medical, that's the recertification. Same goes for navigation. A couple of years ago, Mike and I spent a weekend at an REI class, taking and affirming within our minds that how to navigate, how to read a paper map. And that flows over into the GPS because you need to be able to look at, whatever mapping product that you use. You can see where you physically are, but what's that map telling you about what's ahead of you, what's behind you? How do you determine, okay, does that mean I'm going uphill or does that mean I'm going downhill? And how does, if I'm looking for a landmark on that map, how do I find it? And
to be able to correlate that back to your GPS, their GPS is great, but when you want to look at the bigger picture, paper maps is fantastic, because then you're like, well, we want to go here, but maybe we make a loop over here, and you're not going to see that all on a GPS because it's going to have to be so zoomed out. You're not going to be able to connect everything together. So paper maps are absolute must.
Yeah.
Always have it as a backup.
Yeah. But navigation, I think, is another one of those skills, along with medicine and first aid and communication. They're all soft skills that we don't think about, the fact that we need to know how to accomplish those things when the other happens. You know,
I agree.
When something that's not on, you know, the syllabus for the day comes around a corner at you, or you come around a corner at it.
So another part of education, and this is something that really rubs me wrong, because I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of really nice rigs. But most of these guys, they're taking them to the service department. They don't know anything about the vehicles. And when I have these discussions, I often recommend, if it's any way possible for you to install it, you figure out how to do it and install it. Or you have someone who knows how to install it, and you right there over his shoulder. Because when you're out on that trail, if something goes wrong, you're the mechanic. You're the mechanic. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I have to agree 100%. I'm a licensed airframe and power plant mechanic. That is my trade. When I parted from the military service, went to school to become an airframe power plant mechanic, and that is my hobby as well. I mean, I built this rig 2 years ago. I built and maintained my brand new 2000 Toyota Tacoma and drove it for 392,000 miles, 20 years and 2 months.
Wow.
Factory engine. Now, I did have a rebuilt manual transmission that I installed. All the drivetrain was either upgraded or rebuilt. And taking that knowledge and becoming friends and business partner with Will, I started to train him on his truck. And he is now, we've rebuilt the suspension on his vehicle a couple times. We were getting ready to go to the Mojave Desert in February of this year. And I called him and said, hey, take a break. I'm going to be off work in about an hour. So he held up at a parking ride. He went to start the truck. Fuel pump was bad. When he told me what was wrong, I was like, that sounds like a bad fuel pump. He did get it towed and have to take it to the service shop. Sure enough, it was the fuel pump. And trying to be able to convey those things in trail fixes and being able to have confidence in your vehicle not breaking down, and if it does, at least be able to patch it together to get you to the pavement so you can call the tow service, AAA, or whatever you use.
Yeah, that's been a big recurring theme in my education over the last 10 years as Mike and I have off-roaded together. Mike has been our trail mechanic, but it's never been a case of, okay, Mike, just go fix it. If Mike's underneath my truck, I'm underneath my truck, and I've learned so much about, because I'm not an A&P mechanic. I'm a computer guy. That's my day job background, and I've learned my truck front to back, and I have a high level of confidence that if something breaks on my truck, I can diagnose it.
That's awesome.
And I have a growing confidence over the years that if something breaks on the trail, I can fix it, because we have executed some very interesting trail fixes over the years, and we've put in new CD axles in several vehicles that have busted over the years. I blew a brake drum, so we pinched off the brake line and drove the vehicle 60 miles out of the backcountry with brakes on only 3 wheels and filling the brake fluid up every 10 miles or so. So knowing those kind of things and having the confidence that if something happens, you can you can fix it and you can get yourself out of a situation.
Absolutely.
Is important.
So that's a good segue into what we're really here to talk about. Talk to my audience briefly. The real reason we're here, first of all, I want you to know this isn't just some fly-by-night that I happen to be at Northwest Overland and asked you guys for an interview. This is something that's been in the works for quite some time for us to sit down and talk. And it's a very important thing to me, because if you're going to get training, I want you to see guys in front of my camera who I think you should actually get the training from. So the first thing I want to discuss is why we should be talking to you or someone of your ilk to get training from. Now, I see these big patches on your shirts that say I4WDTA, and down below I see a very important thing where it says certified training. So could you tell me a little bit about this organization that you have certified training from?
Absolutely. Our friend and mentor, Bill Burke, was the U.S. representative in the Camel Trophy races back in the day. Started Bill Burke 4-Wheel Drive America. Realized that there needed to be a standard in off-road driving, vehicle recovery, and ethics, not just the driving and the recovery, but ethics in how you treat this forest. And as he molded this, he developed this thought process of how he wanted to do it. And it's a peer review, so there's, say, 10 candidates. There will be at least 20 certified trainers peer reviewing and testing those candidates to select who's going to be passed as a trainer. It's a standard in training that isn't just like the good old boys club. You're not just going to get picked to because you've driven, and nothing taken away from folks driving around the world. They've done that and they've survived, and they come back to tell the stories. You're being tested on your presentation skills, your knowledge, and all those other things that we spoke of earlier. You also have to be able to lead in the backcountry. You can't just be knowledgeable in recovery and driving. You have to be able to lead a group of people, because you're now responsible for those folks 20, 30, 40 miles back.
I mean, to flesh that out a little bit, the certification process for the I4WDTA is a week-long, peer-reviewed test for certification. And like Mike said, you may have 10 candidates for certification and 20 certified trainers that are there evaluating them over the course of 5 days. And you're evaluated on teaching skills, leadership skills, on your vehicle knowledge of a wide range of vehicular topics, driving skills, knowledge of recovery gear, and your ability to not only deploy that recovery gear, but to communicate to an audience how to use that recovery gear in a safe way. We also cover subjects like tread lightly or save the trail or any number of other conservation-focused theories or organizations. And how, again, to convey those things like, stay on the trail, share the trail, how to drive sympathetically both for your vehicle and for the trail so that you're not damaging either one.
So you let me know, I want to make sure that I've got what you said correctly. So the particular certifications that you gentlemen have is not just they've taught you how to do everything, they've also taught you how to teach everything.
The thing that I would back up and say is that Mike and I both started the process of getting to the point that we were certified trainers by being consumers of this knowledge. So we started our long journey by going to an I4WDTA certified trainer, like Bill Burke in this case, and started learning. And that process of going to classes, learning to drive, getting rid of a lot of our bad driving habits, learning to recovery processes and techniques, convinced us of the value of that knowledge. And over the course of years, he and I continued that education separately and together, and to the point that we reached a level in our education that we really said, okay, we understand the concepts, we practice these concepts in the field and in our travels, and we feel like we can contribute to this organization and their message. So we became more involved and looked to get involved with that organization. And then we were, through that involvement, were invited to come in and test for certification.
That's awesome.
So it isn't just you go down there and test and you get the certification. It's about a 65 to 70% fail rate. It isn't I show up and I get the patch. It's a humbling experience. Outside of the military, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, above and beyond military service schools.
Right. After
No, go ahead.
After the week of testing, when I tested for certification, I still needed a year of remedial work. I had to work with a mentor over the course of a year.
Wow.
To bring myself up to the standards and to finalize my certification.
Well, this sounds like a very big distinction from a lot of the other trainings that I've heard of, because they are exactly what you said this one isn't. It's pretty much you show up, you get a certificate.
Oh, yeah.
So what you're telling me is you got to really know what you're doing.
You've got to come into, and the TFC, that a lot of people may have heard of the I4W DTA's TFC. It's not a training for certification course. It is a test for certification.
I love it.
At 5 p.m. on Sunday evening, you get your book. And that's when you're on the clock. And everything you do, everything you say is judged. And you better speak the right language.
Okay, so it sounds like I got the right gentleman sitting here. So let's break this down. Let's break down what it is that you guys offer in your training, because that's what people really want to know. They don't care about whether they should or shouldn't do it. They want to know what you guys got to offer.
Sure.
And I know you guys got a lot to offer, so I'm anxious to get into that.
Sure.
So break down what an average class in general
Right.
would be about. What would a person learn? What would they take away from your class?
Well, our classes tend to focus on either driving skills or vehicle recovery skills. In a driving skills course, we're going to start out and introduce people to their vehicles in a way that they may not have thought about it. We look at how mechanically that vehicle's four-wheel drive system works and how it applies power to each wheel of the vehicle, so that they can understand the dynamics of what's happening on the trail as as they're driving along. And then we try to have them focus on, okay, let's think of some driving dynamics. Where do they sit in the vehicle? How do they hold on to the steering wheel? How do they properly apply gas and throttle to modulate their speed on the trail? Very, very basic stuff. And then we build up from there.
From the driver position, we do what we call a vehicle 360. We crawl around under the vehicle, and it doesn't matter the vehicle. We point out all the what we call the low-hanging fruit, where your front differential is, whether it be a live axle or IFS vehicle. Placement of the transfer case. Oh, is it by my hip? So as you drive down the trail, you build this mental picture of where all my soft components, low-hanging fruit is, so that way I can mitigate dragging those parts on whatever surface we're driving down, rocks or trees, stumps, whatever the trail may be. So now you can project out, I've got a stump, I've got a rock, I need to kind of maneuver this way, drive this way, I got to consider my wheel cheat, how all my tires follow a different path in a turn, how to apply power, how to 2-foot drive, left foot brake, hand position, whether you're driving at a higher speed at 9 and 3, or your hands in technical 8 and 4 for technical trails, so you can shuffle steer. You're not waxing on and waxing off the wheel. There's a lot of, again, nuances, like Will was saying, that can make you a better driver.
And so we try not to do too much didactic training. Lecturing to adults in education really is less effective. We try to give them a basis of information and then take them out on the trail and have them apply it or experience it. And so we we've been very fortunate through a couple of different organizations to have some private properties that we can do some training on. And so we're able to get out and through repeated access to similar and different obstacles on a trail of our choosing, we can help them to experience and apply those concepts that we talk about. They'll do some driving, we'll come back, we'll do a little bit more didactic discussion of what they saw, what they felt. We'll take them into the next subject and then apply it again on the trail to help them understand what their vehicles are capable of, how to properly apply throttle and brake to work their vehicles through these obstacles without, skinny pedal out type applications. And it's really that where one of the great joys in what we do comes out, because it's in those moments when somebody is tackling an obstacle that they walked up to and said, I can never drive that. My vehicle can't do that. And within a matter of moments, they've conquered that particular obstacle. And to see that light bulb moment, those light bulb moments, like we call it, where somebody gets it, where they feel all the things that we've been talking about through the day happening underneath their feet, and their vehicle ends up on the other side of that obstacle. And that's one of the great motivators for what we do, is to see those light bulb moments and people realize, okay, my vehicle is this capable, but because I understand how to operate it.
I love it. I've been fortunate enough to see you guys here over several years doing some of your training here at Northwest Overland Rally, and I've seen nothing but positive, people walking away, people with smiles, people going, I thought I knew it all, and I learned a whole lot. Let's talk about the Northwest Overland Rally and your part or participation in it. Sure. How did that first get started?
I started with the first one back in Ellensburg just off Monash Road. I was looking for a way to enjoy being in my vehicle out in the backcountry. I've always been an off-roader, four-wheeler growing up in Nebraska, and found about the Northwest Overland Rally and came to the first one, was volunteered continuously every year. This is obviously with COVID we didn't have it for the past couple of years, but this is my 10th year in a 12-year span of coming to every rally. And over those years, slowly, after I became a wilderness first aid, I became part of the first aid team. Initially, I think we helped out on the Sunday, the Offroad Challenge course. I initially started with that and worked my way into different volunteer positions. And then when we became, the year before we became certified trainers, Ray invited us out and said, hey, can you guys put on a powered winch clinic for us? Ray Highland, that is. Can you put on a powered winch clinic for us? And I'm like, absolutely. And we had already had thought processes of going to test. So we came out and was able to do a training, and quite a few people were pretty pleased with what we had to train, and then which obviously boosted our confidence to go back and test in 2017.
So I want to go back to the first Northwest Overland Rally with you guys. And before I say that, I just want my audience to know that when they do these trainings, first of all, they're packed. And then when the training is over, the people follow him as you guys walk away over to your booth, and they're still asking you questions and still talking to you and telling you stories. Bottom line, they're very popular. They're almost like celebrity status here. Yeah, he's not going to say it, but I'm saying it. So, was it always like that? What was the first one like?
No, the first one was really low key. It was mostly the Overland Journal magazine staff, some local volunteers from a local club, and it was very low key. In fact, I was having email communications with a good friend of mine, Luke Sutton from Drifted Kitchens in Australia. Mm-hmm. He got his start in the North Cascades as a horse pack guide. He happened to be in Washington that same time frame. We had dinner with him. Him and his family stayed at the house. They said, hey, there's this off-road overland rally. How would you like to come? He's like, I think that'd be great, mate. So Luke and his family all came to that first one. It was kind of cool. It was very low key.
That was very cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. And well, you got to know a lot of really good people. Met a friend of mine, Dave Bennett, who runs a forum, American Adventurist. Since that rally, I've been friends with him, and just went down in February, and he had his Desert Rendezvous for American Adventurists, and that was the first one I was ever attended because they're mostly down in California and Arizona, but I made a point to go see my friend after 11, 12 years, and I was fortunate enough to go down there and be able to put on a training on safe extract recovery gear.
So that makes me think. You mentioned all the people who showed up at your very first time coming here, and that's like a wow moment, and things have escalated ever since.
Oh, absolutely.
So my question is, with all your celebrity, with all the popularity that you guys have at these events, what's made you not say, hey, I'm too big for this now? Because you pretty much got your pick of where you can go, things, you've got offers for different things. You've got choices now. What makes you keep coming back here?
This is our 11th or 12th week in a row that we're at an event or conducting a class, and Mike and I are both looking forward very much to having a weekend off. So
why didn't you take a break and not show up here? Why do you keep coming here?
The thing that comes to mind is, as we've been sitting here talking, there have been 24 people that have walked past here, and that I know and that I don't ever see, but here at the rally. And as the event has grown over the years, I wasn't a first year like Mike. I've been here coming since year 3, but this is a family event.
Yes, very much so.
And not coming and supporting Ray and Mary Ann just seemed wrong. And not coming and seeing the people that we know and that we look forward to seeing at the rally, that we would only see at the rally, would seem wrong. And it was worth the effort for us to take the time in our schedule and make this event, because for the Pacific Northwest, for the overlanding community, I think this is an event like no other.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, obviously, I do a lot of interviews. I've done a lot of them today, and I've asked this of everybody. So I want to hear your version of this, since we're talking about Northwest Overland Rally. Like, I go to the big ones, the Overland Expos, and I go to things that are smaller and everything. But there's pretty much only 2 events that I recommend. I recommend people go to the big Kahuna, go at least once to an Overland Expo. And then there's a second tier, in my opinion, and that's everybody else. And of that second tier, this is the only place that I recommend. And it's primarily because of this strong mix of education, but then you've got an equal amount of social. And then we've just got like a sprinkle of vendors thrown in, where it's usually vendors, training, and maybe some social.
Yeah. I think that the balance that they have here at vendors to the social is really good. And the fact that everyone is camping right here and that they just stroll out of their campsite to see the vendors and they go home. It's not like the big Kahuna event where you've got this one spot where all the vendors are, and then there's another spot where all the camping is, and sometimes you're shuttling back and forth between the two. It's all integrated, and everybody just, strolls in and out, and people walk the campsites to see the rigs and how people are set up, and they stop and they make friendships and they have conversations along the way. And after 8 or 10 years in his case, we still do that. And we tend to be pretty busy at these events, but the first thing I did when I got here this morning was, I made sure he was okay and he survived the night without me here, and then I walked to see who I could see, to
Right.
see who I could say hey to, who I could catch up with. And that's what this event's all about. Vendors or not, that's what this event's about.
Well said.
This morning, 6:30, I was sitting underneath the awning. The rain was coming down and just sipping my cup of coffee. And this gentleman's walking his dog. Don't know him from Adam, but we had about a 30-minute conversation about trucks and off-roading and camping and just, it was a nice conversation, complete stranger. He didn't know who I was. I was in my sweatshirt and ball cap and just crawled out of my sleeping bag. And it's how those relationships that I've had for 10 plus years with folks, that's how they got started. You know, whether you're sharing a cup of coffee at 6 o'clock in the morning or a beer at 7 in the evening with your dinner and you're just sitting around chit-chatting. That's what I feel this event is about, is making those connections and relationships.
Again, well said. We met
Absolutely.
Here.
We camped next
I
to you
was
5
glad
years
to
ago.
finally see you after a few years not seeing you.
Oh yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a while since we've gotten together. And you know, when Mike told me that he had been in contact with you and you wanted to talk, I was like, that's great, that's awesome. And I remember sitting around inside underneath Dan's awning on that cold evening in June that year, and just talking for, it seemed, hours.
Right. So, if you were to just say it in a couple of sentences to someone, we kind of extrapolated things. Let's condense things down and make them real simple. If you only had a couple of sentences, you only had like 30 seconds to tell somebody why they need to come see you and get some training, what would you say?
Right.
At the end of the day, after a well-enjoyed day out on the trail, you want to bring everybody home that left on the trail with you, and you want to drive your vehicle home in the same shape that it was, and you want to leave the trail better than you found it.
I love it.
I can't improve on that. That's perfect.
That's perfect. You need to write that down somewhere.
Do good things and good things will happen and come to you.
I agree. Write that one down too, folks. Well, I want to thank you guys because I had to pull you away from people. So I want to thank you for giving me this time. It's been long in the making, this interview, and I'm finally glad to finally have had it.
Thank you for
Well, it's because I respect your game.
this.
I believe that what you're giving the people is something that they need, and if they haven't heard about it, they need to hear about it. So I'm enjoying this just as much as you. And I want to thank both of you guys for sharing the time with me.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And I'm going to just speak
Enjoyed it.
briefly to my audience if you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, guys, I hope you've learned something today. And if you haven't, what you should have learned is you don't know what you think you know. And the way you're going to learn it is through certified training. With that, I want everybody to stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully I'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.